back to those 5 cities. And these 5 cities are important because they give us the backbone of St. Paul's second missionary journey. And really so much of our trip is following that second missionary journey. So Paul had a first missionary journey, it was very small. He was just getting started. Then he had this second one. This was the largest and the most fruitful. He had third missionary journey where he tried some other areas that was fruitful. That's where Ephesus comes in. So we're adding Ephesus to our pilgrimage. Paul always wanted to make a fourth missionary journey. He wanted to get to Spain, but God said no. James the Greater got to go to Spain, not Paul. So they hoped for 4, but he only made 3 missionary journeys. And the largest, again, the most substantial, is the second missionary journey. And that really is the one predominantly that our pilgrimage is following. So we know those 5 cities, we have the basis of that second missionary journey. And so the first city is Philippi. What is it? Philippi. We were there yesterday. Paul's called. He wants to go to Cilicia and Syria. The Spirit says, come back. Go instead, cross over. Go to Macedonia. He obeys. He doesn't do what he wants. He obeys the Spirit. He goes, and when he comes to Macedonia, he goes to Philippi. That's the largest city. Again, if you're going to go, you might as well go big, right? But after he's in Philippi, we hear about everything that happened there. He's in prison because he cast out the bad spirit. But then the earthquakes and the angels saved Paul and Silas. We saw that prison cell. And then there's a disturbance because you realize he's a Roman citizen. They've overstepped, and so they want Paul to go. And Paul wanted to leave too. That's where Paul comes to Thessaloniki. And he comes here because this is the capital city. And he comes with the same message. He knows he's now called to Macedonia, northern Greece, and he wants to again proclaim the gospel. So first we can say we know Philippi. We can say Philippi if you want, right? So Philippi, we were just there. We were there. The letter to Philippians. That's who he's writing to. So the first city is what? Philippi. Then he comes here at the Thessaloniki. It's the second city. We're going to talk a little bit about what happens when he gets to Thessaloniki. What was the second city? Thessaloniki. And it doesn't go well here either. And so he moves on to Berea, which was another larger kind of city. So he goes to Berea. It doesn't go well there either. In fact, they beat him up. They really mistreat him in Berea. So that's the third city. So it's the first one?
Philippi.
The second?
Thessaloniki.
The third?
Berea.
And then he figures, well, I might as well go for the gusto. He leaves Macedonia, he goes back to Greece, and he goes to Athens, the capital city, the birthplace of Greek philosophy. And we're going to see very much what happens when he gets to Athens. By worldly standards, Athens was a colossal failure. After he leaves Athens, he never returns there. He never writes to the Athenians. He entrusts the church to Dionysius, one of his few converts. Dionysius goes on to do great things, but Athens, not much happens there. And then after Athens, he goes to Corinth. We know Corinth, the Corinthians. We're going to spend some time in Corinth. We're going to hear all about St. Paul's time in Corinth because that's really becomes his home base. He's processing and trying to figure out what just happened in Macedonia, what just happened in Athens. And there in Corinth, we can say he gets his bearings. And that's where he sends Timothy to the Thessalonians. He writes the 2 letters. 1st and 2nd Thessalonians are the oldest part of the New Testament. So tonight or during our journey on the road, if you want to do some reading of the scriptures, you can go to 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. They're not very long. Those are the oldest parts of the scriptures, of the New Testament. So he goes to Corinth. He writes the 2 letters to the Thessalonians. He sends Timothy. He sends Silas to the Philippians. He wants to check on them. And he gets good reports about the Philippians, but he does not get good reports about the Thessalonians. That's why they get 2 letters. But I want to just go over those cities. I want to talk a little bit about Paul's time in Thessaloniki. So it's the first city?
Philippi.
And then?
Thessaloniki.
And then? Berea. And then?
Athens.
And then?
Corinth.
Acts chapters 15 to 18. The second missionary journey. Again, I would encourage you to read the whole of the Acts of the Apostles. It's only 28 chapters. And remember, a chapter in the Bible is only a page. So it's like saying, roughly, it's 28 pages. You're on a pilgrimage in the footsteps of Paul. This would be the great time to commit to reading those 28 pages. But if that's just not where you are yet, we know that there are two subparts of the Acts of the Apostles. Chapters 1 through 12, the book of Peter. As Catholics, we love the book of Peter. Acts chapter 13 to 28, the book of Paul. We are literally walking a portion of the book of Paul. So there's a second part. And if even that's too much, or we're tired, then just read Acts chapters 15 to 18. And I would encourage you, when you go home, read them again. And realize, I was just there. Or the next time you hear the lector at Mass here reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Philippians, I was there. Or the reading of the first or second letter to the Thessalonians from St. Paul, we can say, I was there. And later when we hear about the first and second letters to the Corinthians, we can say, I was there. So 5 cities. Paul leaves Philippi, he comes to Thessaloniki. He doesn't really know where to go or what the outlets are. We have a Jewish community here in Thessaloniki, but also we have what are called the God-fearers. And that's a very important group that really doesn't get a lot of attention in terms of the ancient world. The God-fearers were Greek people who felt compelled to follow the law of Moses. They very much were attracted to the idea of one God. They followed, for the most part, the way of life of the Old Testament, except for a Greek man, the idea of being circumcised was offensive. So they would not submit to circumcision. So, for all intents and purposes, they were followers of the Old Covenant. They were worshipers of the one true God, but they weren't of the covenant because they were not circumcised. So they were called God-fearers rather than Jews. And one of the prominent God-fearers in this city was Jason. Acts chapter 17, you need to know about Jason. He was a good man. Paul comes to Thessaloniki, he's preaching, and people are getting fired up, they're getting excited about what's happening. He's here for a while. We know that he preaches 3 major sermons that rock this city. While he's here, he starts to work because cash is a little difficult. Lydia hadn't kicked in yet. So he's doing work, he's selling tents in order to make some money in order to support his ministry. So he's here for a while. We suspect 2 or 3 months for his first visit. He comes back multiple times. But he gets here, he starts preaching. Well, the men of the town get upset. And I love how they expressed it. After preaching, Paul and his companions, Silas and others, they go to the house of Jason. Jason gives them hospitality. And while they're in Jason's house, the men of Thessaloniki come and they bang on the door of Jason and say, throw those men out who have turned our world upside down. Isn't that great? What a beautiful summary of the gospel. In a culture that worshipped Zeus and Apollo and Hera, one true God turns the world upside down. In a culture where mercy was considered effeminate, men didn't show mercy. Mercy was a sign of weakness. Someone hurt you or your family, you crushed them. You made sure that they feared you and your family and your clan. Men didn't show mercy. And to have the announcement that this one God is the God of mercy, oh, this must be a woman's God. Turn their world upside down. That God is love. In Greek mythology, love was the bastard child of need and poverty, 2 lesser gods, who were at a wine party, got a little tipsy, had a little hookup in the garden, and gave birth to love. Need and poverty, lesser gods. That's how they viewed love. You don't show love. No, it's duty. You don't show love. You show power. And in that world, the gospel was announced that there's one God, and he is love. Turns our world upside down. Throw those men out who have turned our world upside down, that we might do violence to them. Jason defends Paul and his companions. He will not throw the apostle out. That was the greeting of the apostle here in Thessaloniki. There were riots after he preached because it changed everything. If what this man says is true, then everything that we have lived, all that we have believed is incomplete or just plain wrong. Do we need that message today? Well, first of all, we need that message in our own lives, right? Because we're fallen. I sometimes tell people in the spiritual life, whatever you are inclined to do right away, do the opposite. You know? Someone says something, well, I'm going to give it to them. Do the opposite. So in that world, they say upside down, we say right side up, right? So we don't trust our fallenness. We need to have a healthy suspicion. I feel, I think, good, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. Now allow for the transformation of your mind so that you can know what is good and pleasing and perfect to your Father in heaven and follow that. Someone hurts me, I'm going to hurt them back. No, do the opposite. They hurt you, be kind to them. Because when we are unkind and unkind and unkind, who wins? Sin, the evil one, unkindness. An eye for an eye only leads to a blind world. Fire fighting fire only leads to a scorched earth. We Christians stop the cycle of sin in its tracks. You want to be unkind to me? That's between you and your fallen heart. But I will not be an accomplice. You'll be unkind. I will show you compassion. I will show you patience. I will turn the fallen world right side up by the grace of God. The Thessalonians understood that. There was an integrity and honesty. Sometimes when people call contemporary secularists pagans, I say, don't do that. That's actually very insulting to ancient pagans. You know what I mean? At least ancient pagans had some sense of integrity and understanding of transcendence. Right? Secular people today know what I want, what I think, what I feel, that's what I deserve. I can have a full life without God. God's an option. If you need God because you're scared of death or scared of the dark, fine, you can do that. But God's an option. That's how the secular world views things. We know that we were made by God and for God. The only way we're ever going to fully live as human beings is by humbling ourselves and allowing God's grace to turn our fallen world right side up. The Thessalonians understood that. That's why there were riots. We can look at our preaching today. We forget the radical message of the gospel. We've domesticated it. So the gospel, you can imagine, is this huge lion. It's like that dog that wanted to beat up Nick. Okay, you know what I mean? Play with Nick. It's a huge lion. That's the gospel. But we've turned into a little kid. We've domesticated it. And then we say the gospel doesn't make any difference anymore. What doesn't make any difference because we're not living it. The gospel has never been tried and found wanting. Never. But it has always wanted to be tried. Tell the secular person, you think this way of life is ridiculous. Live it for a month. Live the path of mercy and kindness and understanding and self-service and love and reconciliation. Live this life for 1 month and tell me whether or not it makes a difference. If you're going to live this life, you're going to realize, oh, so I want to show mercy, oh, I want to show kindness, oh, I want to die to myself. Suddenly the spiritual life just kicks in. Because if I'm going to really do this, then I'm going to need to pray. If I'm going to really do this, I'm going to need other people who are living this way of life too. If I'm going to do this, I need the help of God. And this begins to bring the whole Christian way of life together. So the Thessalonians understood, but eventually they would kick Paul out of Thessaloniki. They don't want him. And he will leave Thessaloniki and go to Berea. And Berea doesn't go well either. Have you seen a pattern yet? Philippi, nah. Thessaloniki, nah. Berea, nah. Athens, no. Corinth, will tolerate you. My goodness, by the world's standards, Paul was kind of a failure, right? Like at the end of the day, he couldn't say, I have thousands and thousands who have accepted the gospel. He couldn't say that. In the course of time, he could say that his legacy has done that. But imagine Paul just out of Philippi, out of Thessaloniki, out of Berea. My goodness, at any point he could have just said, what's the point? I give up. No one's listening. What's the point? But that never happened for the apostle because he knew that his message, his call, was to share the gospel. It was not to convert people. The conversion of hearts is between the person and the Holy Spirit. Doesn't that take the pressure off? I just have to give witness. I just have to live the Christian way of life, and I have to speak openly, speak the truth in charity to other people so they can understand the gospel. And then that's it. I don't have to keep on top of them. You got to accept this. You got to come to Mass. I don't have to do that. The Holy Spirit does that part. I say he does the heavy lifting, right? Paul could be a complete piece. I have done what was asked. I have fulfilled my commission. He will later write in his second letter, his last letter, second letter to Timothy, I have fought the good fight. I have run the race. I have fulfilled what was given to me. Isn't that powerful? Like, he could see worldly failure and say, it's okay. God's got it. Because he fulfilled what was asked of him, and he knew he was just throwing seeds. And look what the Holy Spirit has done with those seeds. So in our lives, we can look at Paul's example in Thessaloniki. 2 lessons. First, let's make sure we're turning the fallen world right side up. Sometimes even as Christians, I think, I feel, I want, that means it's okay. That's a recipe for disaster and misery. So let's make sure we're turning the world right side up. I want this, I want that. Examine, discern. What is God asking? What is morally good? And let's do that. That's the first part. Right side up. And secondly is, as we share the gospel, let's not take on a weight that doesn't belong to us. Our task is to share the message, to give credible witness. We don't have to worry about the conversion of hearts. We don't have that power, that authority. It's not ours. That's where the Holy Spirit comes in. So we can let the Holy Spirit do his part. Right side up and faithful witness. That's all the Lord asks of us.